I forgot to turn on my microphone there. All right. Hello, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and say hi down in the chat if you haven't already. Go ahead and give the stream a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I've got a really exciting guest today, maybe the most exciting one we've had yet. So I think you're really going to enjoy that. Please excuse me if you can hear a little bit of rain in the background. It's storming where we are, so hopefully you won't be able to hear that. Real quick before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that the Lucretia Report Patreon was recently revamped, so go check that out. We've got a whole bunch of new tiers, a whole bunch of new benefits, early access to videos and other content, merch discounts, free merch, topic voting, stuff like that. And if you like this shirt and want to buy it, you can buy it at lucretiareport.com/store and watch until the end for a 10% discount code. So, our guest today, she is a Democrat running for the Texas House of Representatives, which is one of the key states to watch for down-ballot races this year, and of course, down-ballot races are some of the most important ones. We could flip the Texas State House, possibly the Texas State Senate, and that would be enormous. I don't have to tell you that. She's a gun safety activist, she's a mother, and she's doing some of the most important work of any of the people we've talked to yet, maybe any of the people that we will talk to in coming weeks. So, she's the candidate for the Texas House of Representatives in the 106th District, Jennifer Skidanenko. Let's give it up for her. Hi, how are you? I'm outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us today. I forgot to turn on the desktop audio again, so hopefully people can hear you now. I don't know what's happening with my brain today.
Oh, no. Well, I hope they can hear me. But yeah, I was just saying that I like that shirt, so I think people should buy it.
Thank you very much. It's flags of different movements of resistance to tyrannical governments.
Yes.
Got like flags from the American Revolution and like flags of resistance to the Nazis and the Benito Mussolini and stuff like that.
All Love it.
Of stuff. Check lucretiareport.com/store. Thank you. Anyway, so real quick, give us a little self-introduction.
Okay, well, yes, I am Jennifer Skidonenko, and I am running for House District 106, which is in Northeast Denton County. I am running to unseat a freshman incumbent Republican who is anti-everything that is good with the world, anti-LGBTQ, anti-expanding Medicaid. He is a Christian nationalist. He thinks that the Second Amendment is all you need for a background check. And has voted already to take away local control from city and municipal governments. He's just not a great representative. I am running because, as Ian mentioned, I am a mom. I have two boys. My oldest is in the Army. He's 19, and my youngest is 6. Just started virtual first grade. And, I have a vested interest here for public education to be top-notch quality, and more people in this state need access to healthcare. But in addition to that, we need something to help us stabilize the cost of our insurance. So there's that. And then my top issue, the reason that made me run, is gun violence prevention. That's just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. It's so important what you're doing, and thank you for running. We need so many more people to not only recognize how important down-ballot races are, state legislatures, and even below state legislatures, city, district attorneys, mayors, councils, but also to run for them. I went to the Texas Democratic Convention in 2018, and they said that it was the first year in, I don't know, a number of years. I think it was the first year in a number of years that every seat in the Texas Senate had a Democrat running, and that was less of a, oh, that's cool, as much of it like, oh, wait, they weren't running people in those seats? That's insane. So I'm glad to see that you're running, and thank you so much for that. We got some breaking news just from today as we come into this. Bob Woodward, who previously wrote Fear, is releasing another book, Rage, and apparently Donald Trump has admitted to Bob Woodward on tape, according to CNN, although I haven't heard the tapes yet.
I have.
That he knew that he knew how dangerous the coronavirus was, that he knew it was airborne, that he knew it was highly contagious, that he knew it was deadly. On February 7th, he told him, this is deadly stuff, and then 3 days later, he went out and said it will be gone by April, and it's not a big deal, and we're doing it great. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I am unsurprised, but still pretty angry. Here we have a president who had all of the information, and I think we've known this, but the question was he taking it seriously? Did he understand how bad this was, or did he believe his own conspiracy theories that it was a hoax and it was not as bad as the flu and all that? But the recordings confirm he knew exactly what COVID-19 was. He knew that it's like you said, he knew it was airborne. He knew that it was going to affect young people. He knew that the death rate was going to be higher than the flu. Um, and yet he stood in front of everybody on live TV and called it a Democratic hoax. He said it was going to go away. He said that, he lied to the American people. And here we are finding out 7 months later, thanks Woodward, that and hundreds of thousands of deaths and millions of cases later, that he could have just been a grown-up about it and had a better plan. And we probably would not have to sit here on a Zoom call. My son would be able to be at school. A lot of people would still be alive and living healthy lives. But that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brother he's going to the University of Alabama, and they have a big outbreak there. The mayor of Tuscaloosa just opened the bars again for whatever reason. I don't think there's one person in the world that's not affected by this, though, and especially in this country. He said at the very beginning that we're the best prepared country in the world for a pandemic, and that was an actual number he was quoting, but you have to actually do something about it for that preparedness to matter.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a testament both to malice and to incompetence. It's the same thing that Michelle Obama and I think Elizabeth Warren said at the DNC, that he's in over his head. He doesn't know what he's doing because he's looking at the short-term political benefits, but he's not realizing that if he had done something about this and he had sorted this out in the beginning, he would be so popular right now. He would be winning this election. Look at all the other world leaders that have their polling numbers going way higher because they have a rally around the flag effect and they sorted things out. And instead, it's his biggest liability because he can't look past today. He can't look past this news cycle.
Yeah, and he can't even look beyond himself. It didn't occur to him that letting a lot of people die was a bad thing. I think when you have to weigh the way putting people in a panic versus the gravity of that many people dying, you'd think that any normal person would choose putting people in a panic. Or according to him, he didn't want to panic people, but he'll panic you when it comes to saying that, suburban moms, your neighborhoods are going to be invaded, and panicking people over immigration and all these other issues. But he didn't want to panic people about something that was real and headed our way and going to hurt people. So and this affects Texas in such an enormous way because that trickled down to leadership here in our state, which is really what I want to get down to, is that we had a governor who was afraid to make decisions. So he put it in the laps of the counties, who then put it in the laps of mayors and cities. And meanwhile, my opponent and a lot of Republican state legislators were just sitting on the sidelines saying, everything's fine, it's a hoax, we're going to be fine, it's just the flu. And even my opponent saying, we don't need to do anything in the rural areas because they're way out there. Well, that he's turned out to be proven wrong on that countless times. So it's proving that we have the wrong people in leadership right now on all levels.
Yeah, now that we're on the topic of Texas state politics, you're running for the Texas State House of Representatives. And like I said in our intro, that's one of the states. This is one of the states to watch this year. It takes 9 seats to flip the Texas House of Representatives. People think it's a deep red state, but It's surprisingly close.
Yeah.
And if you can flip the Texas House of Representatives and you're one of those, how big of a deal could that be? What could you do with that?
Well, it's going to be a huge deal because I'm pretty sure it's been, I think we've lost count, but it's been decades since that's happened, since the Democrats have had control of the House. And what we can do with that is get so much done that the majority of Texans have wanted. They agree with it. The majority of Texans agree with sensible gun laws and
Mhm.
expanding Medicaid and obviously funding public education. And they want them to stop spending time, our taxpayer dollars and time, on issues that are just really not affecting Texans the way that the economy is affecting them. And now COVID, when you focus on abortion and focus on bathroom bills, they don't want that anymore. They want us down there getting the job done. Um,
Mhm.
and they want that through bipartisanship. And I think that can happen if we can flip these seats.
That's great. Um, the One of the issues is though that they've really kind of stacked the deck against Democrats in Texas, as they have in
Yes.
a lot of states. Gerrymandering, voter ID, closing polling places, voter purges, all that. It's created such a higher bar for Democrats to get into elected office than for Republicans. So, what are you doing to overcome that?
Well, my campaign here in 106, I mean, we're kind of limited because of the situation with the pandemic. So we
Mhm.
can't block walk and knock on doors and talk to people face to face or have in person events. But between our campaign and all of these great organizations across the state, we're getting as many voters registered as possible. And then following up with them and saying, hey, we have an election coming up. And the turnout for the primary and then the runoff showed that it's working.
Mhm.
The numbers here in 106 were phenomenal.
Mhm. I
So
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're just, getting our message out there and working our tails off to make phone calls and get the message out.
Great. Yeah, I think I remember when they had the runoff between MJ Hagar and I forget what Royce's first name it was.
Royce West.
Royce West. Oh,
Yeah.
Royce was his first name.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have these numbers in front of me, so if this is off a little bit, but I think that it was higher than um, Beto O'Rourke's primary in 2018. The turnout was higher, and it was a
I
runoff
believe so.
election. Runoff election, not the main primary election. So that's very impressive, and it's a great sign for Democratic turnouts in the state.
Yes. Yeah. People wanted, they showed up to this one. And it was close between MJ and Royce. It was close.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was exciting when I went on voting day because I slacked off and I didn't go for early voting, but I won't do that again. But I went on the day of the election at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I got in, there was a line, but by the time I left, the line was out the door and down the sidewalk, which I was so excited about. I was, oh, look at all these Democrats out here. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's if there's any election to not sit out, this is the one. And I'm also just glad that people are so involved that they're not even just saying, all right, I'll show up in November to vote for Joe Biden, but that they're going to show up to a Senate runoff
yes.
During a pandemic. And it's, yeah, I mean, primaries are important, and every election is important. And I'm glad people are starting to realize that, especially as these protest movements have been taking off. People have even been realizing how important things like sheriff elections and district attorney elections are.
Yep.
So that's outstanding. We were talking about the obstacles Republicans have put up, the voter suppression that they put up. Is that something that you would try to change if you got into the House?
Yes. So right now, a lot of, like, for example, a lot of polling places got shut down across the state. We need to make sure that they are reopened and that we have plenty of locations everywhere, especially in the zip codes where they have, and that they shut down most of them in areas where there's a lot of a lot of Black voters or even a lot of Hispanic and Latino voters. And so we want to make sure that they're accessible and plenty of them, so that way they're not waiting in 8-hour lines, which is just absolutely ridiculous. We need to push to make voter registration so much easier. Do it online. There's no sense in having to print it out, fill it out, and mail it in. It's ridiculous. It's old school, and you're just making it harder. And we need to make it easier so early voting, for example, you can vote at any polling location in the county that you're registered in. Here in Denton County, that's great, because we have a good number of locations, but in some parts of Denton County, everything is pretty far apart, and especially where I live out here in 106. And on election day, it should be the same thing. If you are in Denton County, you're registered in Denton County, you should be able to vote at any polling location. To stand in line for even 5 minutes and then be turned away and told you have to go drive somewhere else is not acceptable. It's basically saying, sorry, you can't vote, good luck.
And picture the people who are standing in line for 3, 8, 4, 5, 6 hours and then get turned around.
Yes. And I think that we just need to stop making it so hard to vote. We already know why. We can talk about the fact that Republicans do this because they know it makes it harder for Democrats to vote. And that's something that they need to look inside and say, wow, all of these people who work all the time are low-income families or Black Americans. Why did they vote for Democrats? But instead of taking a look inside, they just said, well, let's just keep them from voting.
Yeah, my last video was about voter suppression, and you look at, especially now that the pandemic is happening, they're using that as an excuse to close polling places. And if you look at the primaries in Georgia and Kentucky and Wisconsin, where were they closing polling places? In Atlanta, in Louisville, in Milwaukee, where all the Democrats live. And in Texas, I use this example. I think it's 750 polling places that have been closed since, I think, maybe 2016. I can't remember the year. And some 500 and something of those were in the 50 fastest growing Black and Latino counties in the state. And only, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but only like 30 of them were in the fastest growing white counties. So that can't be a coincidence.
It's not. It's blatant racism. I mean, that's systemic racism right there in your face, doing its thing. And so we need to put it into that. We just need to make it easier for everyone to vote. And we also need to put kind of some more funding or kind of figure out a better program to get people educated on voting. I know we have the websites out there, and there is some personal responsibility for people to take a look at the internet if they have access to it, and look up people that are on their ballot. But I think there's other ways that the state can help improve education on voting for its citizens. I think, I feel like it's a duty that our own government does.
In Oregon, because they have universal vote by mail, they send out a booklet to every voter with their ballots that has all of the people on your ballot and little testimonials from each candidate and some fun, quick facts about them. Not fun facts, quick facts.
Yeah, it's not always fun.
Yeah, not always fun. I wonder about gerrymandering. Obviously, that's another reason why state legislatures are so important, is because this is a redistricting year. And in 2010, Republicans won a ton of state legislatures and did some of the worst gerrymandering ever.
Yes.
And so this is an opportunity to reverse that. But some people would say that we shouldn't unilaterally disarm. Some people would say that the Republicans will still gerrymander wherever they have control, so we should do the same if we have control. What would you say about that argument?
So they think that we should gerrymander in favor of the Democrat?
Yeah, the argument is that people would say, if the Republicans are going to be doing it, we're just hurting ourselves by not doing it. How would you respond to them?
Well, one part of me says, Sure, why not? I mean, I understand that sometimes, you can't always be fair, like, but at the same time, that like there's no honor in that. There's no honor in behaving in that way. I think when we redraw the lines, we need to consider population, and and everything depending on where they are in Texas. I don't think we should stoop to something that's going to end up having a lawsuit slapped on us and court orders telling us that we have to redraw it,
Hmm.
because it's not now. With all that said, if we did that, I don't know if it's necessary. Like, a Democrat form of gerrymandering would not necessarily look like discrimination in the way that Republicans gerrymandering did.
Hmm.
They did it to exclude the Black vote in so many of the districts. But Democrats would do it in a way where um, they would almost take advantage of how many Black votes that they could earn in a certain area in certain zip codes.
Hmm.
So I don't know if they would find that that Democrats discriminate so much as just what's the word I'm looking for? Put their thumb on the
Yeah.
on the scale, tip the scales. So
I I don't know if Democratic voters would be very appreciative of that. Um, I mean, we've spent all this time campaigning against things like that. It would be a
yeah,
pretty hard sell to turn around and say that it's okay when we do it.
yeah, no, I agree. I know
Maybe
that there are
Republican voters would buy into that, but I think that Democratic voters are a little more discerning.
yeah, no, I agree, and I think especially the more progressive voters that are a little further left than others, I know that they would not appreciate seeing gerrymandering done, even if it's the Democrats doing it. They just want to see fair and balanced elections and process,
Hmm.
which is, that's why I stick to my point of as much as I would love to do that, it's not honorable, and it's not
Hmm.
something that we should be doing if that's something we've been complaining about for the last 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, that may get some backlash, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I wonder about if you would try to repeal voter ID if you were in the House.
Yeah. I mean, if we went for so many years with what we had before, I I don't know why it has to be stricter now.
Hmm.
Also, full disclosure, I'm supposed to go get my driver's license renewed before October, so not a fan of that because it has to have the little star on it. So I will say that's stupid.
Hmm.
But no, I don't think. I think requiring people to, especially if they don't have access or the resources to get that ID, but if they have something else on them that shows who they are, that's really all that they should have to require. It shouldn't You shouldn't have to take your whole life story, and your birth certificate and everything just to go vote. Obviously, it's I don't think voter fraud is as prevalent as the Republicans like to think it is. So I don't see. I think it's one of those solutions searching for a problem
Hmm.
situations, and it was designed specifically to make it harder for lower income people to vote.
Hmm. There was only something like 34. When the Brennan Center did a study about it, they found 34 instances of voter impersonation. No, I think that may have been all voter fraud, but some incredibly low number out of billions of ballots.
Yes.
Point of like a rate of like 0.0000003%.
Yeah.
Um, so few votes that it could not have turned any state in any election across all of, if you combined all of them in
Hmm.
state in 1 year, it wouldn't have come close to turning any state in any election in any of the ones where in the period they were measuring.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt 34. Although, I mean, some races, yeah, but it wouldn't even affect a mayoral race, let alone presidential and, and
Mm-hmm.
federal. So
Yeah.
I think voter ID is just, it's just another way to make it harder to vote.
Mm-hmm. Um, so Texas, like many states, has a requirement to have a balanced budget. Um, and we've seen recently how what some of the problems with that can be. During this pandemic, States have gotten less tax revenue, because businesses have closed or haven't had as many customers, and they've had more expenses because more people are getting unemployment insurance. They've had more healthcare expenses. They've had to pay for COVID-19 testing, tracing, and most states aren't allowed to have a budget deficit. So if that's the case and they're getting fewer taxes and more expenses, they have to cut services, they have to lay people off. And do you think that in light of all of this, it's time that we look again at whether or not that's something we should actually have on the state level?
That's a really good question. And when I read that, you know, I'm not an expert on budgets. You know, I know just enough. You know, we budget for our household, and I can figure that out. So I'm not a total expert, but I will say, when you limit yourself, if the state limited itself, and in this situation has proven that it's not a good idea, it's not a good plan, it's just hurting us. Then obviously we want to come up with a better solution when this happens again, not if, but when, because it will. And you know, if this is causing problems across the board, obviously we need to take a look at changing that. So I wish I were more knowledgeable on the budget. I have people on my team that help me learn that part of it, as far as, you know, what could happen if we were to repeal that. I wish I could have a better answer for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at government budgets the way they look at their own budget, and they say, "Oh well, I have a budget every month, so why can't the government keep to a budget?"
No, my budget's nothing like a government budget. I already know
Yes.
that.
A lot of people, I think, have that kind of, even if they don't realize it, it's maybe subconscious. But I think a lot people don't fully understand how deficits work. Sometimes deficits can be great. In a recession, deficit spending is what brings you out of a recession. Not to mention that there's a lot of, I don't have time to get onto all the intricacies. Debt is not always as bad as a big number looks.
Right.
But even if you're comparing it to your own budget, sometimes you have to use a credit card. So you can't buy a house. Most people can't buy a house cash. They have to get a mortgage. Sometimes you have to take on debt. And so even if we're looking at it that way and we're saying, I have to keep to a budget, so the government has to keep to a budget, then why are we also saying, but I can use credit cards and get a mortgage and get student loans, but the government can't have any deficit?
No, I agree with you on that one. I think it's kind of oversimplified to look at a government budget the way you look at your household budget. But at the same time, as you just mentioned, people need to remember, like, you have credit cards, you have debt. I have a car payment. That's my debt. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I could go for a smaller car payment. That would be nice. But it's not a terrible thing unless I run out of money. Don't have a job, can't pay the bills, then they take that car away. Then at that point, the debt is bad. So, you know, yes, having deficits can be a good thing. But, you know, like you said, if we're absolutely requiring the budget to be balanced and perfect, and then we get smacked with a pandemic, that everything spirals out of control.
I mean, it's a good thing up until you've got a economic crisis already, and the states have to lay people off, and the states have to stop providing services, and the states have to raise taxes because they're legally required to do so, and it just makes everything worse.
Right. Sorry, I keep getting notifications. I'm trying to shut this off. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, go ahead. I'm trying to. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I'm trying to turn it down.
That's it. I didn't hear it, so I doubt that you can hear it.
Okay, good.
All right. So moving on to the topic of gun safety, which has been one of the center points of your campaign. In 2018, which is the most recent CDC data I found, 3,522 people in Texas died as a result of gun violence. That's more than 9/11. And that happens every year in every state. What do you plan on doing to change that? And and also, what if you don't win the state senate, or what if you just win the state house? What can you do just with the state house, or just with whatever resources you have, just by yourself possibly, to try to make an impact on that?
So, to answer your first question, what I plan on doing to address the high death toll of gun violence, it's a kind of a suite of legislation that needs to happen. The first thing is universal background checks needs to cover all gun sales, whether it's private at a gun show, and then the regular gun sales that do have background checks now as it is. But we need to cover all the gun sales need to have background checks, full stop. And then we need to pass what's called extreme risk protection orders, otherwise known as a red flag law. And to put it simply and to explain it briefly, it empowers law enforcement or a family member or someone that's living in your house to petition a judge and explain to them the situation. This person is a danger to themselves or others. And the judge will make the decision at that point whether or not to remove the guns from that person that's presenting a danger. That's the process. The person who has the guns taken away will be able to appeal the decision. I don't have specifics because the bill hasn't been written yet, but those two things need to happen in conjunction with each other. And as far as domestic violence goes, we need stronger laws to make sure those convicted of domestic violence, whether or not they're married or just living together or just dating, that they are not able to access weapons. Because, for women, when a gun is present, they're 500 times more likely to be shot and killed.
That's a very big number.
And children as well. Children are, children die of gun violence and domestic violence situations a lot more than people would like to talk about. So those are kind of the top three. And then, a gun safety campaign is very important to me because I know you've heard all of the stories of the kids finding guns in in the nightstand or their mom's car or the purse, and they either shoot themselves or somebody else. And it's tragic, it's devastating, but it's completely preventable. It's not an accident. So we need to, not only do we need to have a kind of a proactive safety campaign, but we also need to have something in place that holds the people accountable when a child gets a hold of a gun, because it's irresponsible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I was about to move on to the next question. Didn't realize I still had a second part.
So the next question is, how are we going to do this if the Democrats have control of the House, but the Republicans still have the Senate? What's going to have to happen there is the Democrats and the Republicans are going to have to talk to each other. And it's time that the Republicans understand that the majority of their constituents want these laws. They approve them. All of the data is out there. Several polls have been taken with a very small very small margin, because even a majority of people who say that they are members of the NRA want these. They agree with these laws, and because it's common sense. It's not going out and taking people's guns. The NRA has been telling us, oh, they're going to take your guns. And they've been saying it for 20, 40 years. God, 40 years. They've been saying it for a really long time, and it hasn't happened yet. We had the assault weapons ban that expired a couple of years ago. No one lost their guns. We've had several gun laws in place. People have not lost their guns. And the red flag laws that have been passed in the 19 other states, that judges in a lot of states, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I keep forgetting what it is. But they said it's not an unconstitutional law, and there is due process. So the Republicans need to wake up because, number one, the gun lobby is losing money, which means they're not going to be funding their campaigns anymore. They're not powerful anymore. And it should almost be a relief for them because the majority of their voters don't vote along with the NRA. The loud ones do. And so, bipartisanship is what needs to happen. It's what the people want. And you cannot get more bipartisan than sensible gun laws. So, that's really I don't know if the Senate is going to flip. I haven't seen any kind of polling or anything saying that that's what's going to happen. So, if when the Democrats flip the House, we're going to have to work with a Republican-controlled Senate, and hopefully Greg Abbott gets on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even if you were to flip both chambers, Greg Abbott will still be around for a while.
Yep.
Have you mentioned the NRA? Have you faced much resistance from the NRA or from other groups like that?
Well, there's, when I was with Moms Demand Action before I ran for office, we kind of had to deal with the trolls showing up at our meetings, and because they think they're cute and scary, and they don't scare me. They do intimidate some of the other moms that were at the meeting, so I didn't appreciate that. Guns don't scare me. I'm a gun owner. I grew up in the gun culture. I was taught how to shoot at a very young age. But number one priority for my grandfather when he taught me was safety. And I don't see that now. So, we faced off with the Texas TSRA, Texas State Rifle Association. NRA, not so much, although they did give me a big fat F, which, quite proud of that one. Thank you.
Badge of honor.
Yes. I was told I shouldn't brag about that, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to, because the NRA is corrupt and they shouldn't be getting anybody ratings.
Well, you mentioned they were losing money. Maybe they wouldn't be if they weren't spending it all on Wayne LaPierre's vacations.
Yes. And what's his name? The other guy who's writing a book. I forgot his name already. But he was NRA's number 2.
Oh, is it the guy who is it Oliver North?
No, it's he was kind of the number 2 of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre's second-hand man or something like that.
Oh, I don't even know.
Yeah, he wrote a book, it's like kind of a tell-all book of the behind the scenes at the NRA, and then goes on to say how he thinks we should have red flag laws and universal background checks. So I'm like, you know what? I don't really care what you have to say right now.
Hey, it sounds like you kind of spent your career fighting those things.
Yeah.
I mean, fine, you're on the right team now, but where were you before?
Yeah, he's on the right team now that the ship has sunk.
Yeah. Now that he thinks he can sell a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of a little bit of Anthony Scaramucci, that I'm like, I mean, I'm glad to have you out there talking about Trump, but like,
yeah,
you still seem like a dirtball.
Yeah, he just needs to sit down and shut up. Yeah. Like, okay, thanks, bye.
So we're about halfway through our stream right now. So
okay.
This is tradition. We're gonna play a game, something fun for our.
Yay!
It's gonna be something like bar trivia that's got a little political flair if you haven't seen the stream before. And today our theme is going to be Texas Republicans. Republicans in Texas have said some crazy things in the past. Texas Republicans have been some of the craziest, so much so, in fact, that I bet you'll have a hard time telling which one of these quotes was not from Texas Republicans.
Oh.
What I'm going to do is, for each question, I'm going to give you 3 options, and one of them will be a thing I just made up. 2 of them will be things that people really said or did or posted on social media.
Okay.
And you're going to try to guess which one is the one that I made up. Are you ready?
Yes.
Great. So, in June, 12 Texas GOP county chairs landed in some hot water for sharing racist memes and conspiracy theories on social media. Which of these is not a real thing that they shared? A picture of George Soros with the text, "I pay white cops to murder black people, and then I pay black people to riot because race wars keep the sheep in line." B, a post with a series of 21 puzzling questions about Floyd's death, including, why did the kneeling officer appear completely cool and calm as if he was posing for the camera? Or C, a long and rambling post based on the Anunnaki conspiracy theory, which accused Dr. Fauci of being a lizard person who is beaming mind control rays out of the moon matrix to convince us that the pandemic, which is fake, is happening so the lizard people can confine us to our homes so that it will be easier for them to kidnap us and harvest our monoatomic gold.
What's really weird is I think C is a real one. I think that was really posted. Like, it sounds like something from the QAnon kind of side.
It sounds wild, doesn't it?
It sounds wild, but it also sounds like something they would post.
So what do we think's the fake one?
The fake one, I
We've got
think,
the lizard
is
people, the puzzling questions about George Floyd's death, and the Soros conspiracy. All of them sound pretty credible, don't they?
they sound pretty credible. I'm gonna say A is the fake one.
So, I think the worst part of all of these questions is that two of the options in each of these questions are real.
Yeah.
I did make up the lizard people one, but that is a real conspiracy theory. A Texas
It is.
county chair did not post that, but it is a real conspiracy theory.
Okay, so all right, no, yeah. That's what threw me off because I know it's a
Yes.
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, people really do believe that the lizard people are beaming mind control rays out of the moon matrix so they can harvest our monoatomic gold.
Wow.
So, the the fact that two of these are real. So the George Soros conspiracy, that was Sue Piner, GOP county chair for Como County, and Cinder Weatherby from Reagan County posted the 21 puzzling questions. That's all right, guys.
Alrighty.
That's who's in charge, I guess. So Texas is one of the worst hit states by COVID-19, yet Texas Republicans have seemed not to take the issue seriously, and perhaps no one more than Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Which of these is not something that Dan Patrick really said? A, that there's no way that Trump could have possibly done better at handling COVID-19 and that no leader could do better, ignoring the 193 out of 194 world leaders that did do better. B, that Dr. Fauci doesn't know what he's talking about, because apparently Dan Patrick does, and that he has been wrong on every time on every issue. Or C, that elderly people would be willing to die to reopen businesses a little bit earlier.
Well, I know he said C, because I wrote a piece in response to that. I want to say A is the fake one.
A is the fake one, but it does sound like something they would say, wouldn't it? Isn't
it? Sounds like something he would say, but I know that he said that about Fauci too, because I remember saying,
There we go. That's why you need to pay attention to Texas politics, people. Maybe you can show one day, you can get a point.
You can pass your trivia.
Yes. Texas's 4th congressional district near Houston recently nominated Johnny Tague as the Republican nominee for Congress. Tague is an avowed supporter of the QAnon conspiracy theory. Which of these is not something that QAnon believes? That Robert Mueller was actually working with Donald Trump to take down an international cabal of child sex traffickers. That an event known as The Storm is imminent, in which thousands of people will be arrested and the US military will brutally take control of the country, except for apparently that's a good thing. Or that birds are actually drones built by the CIA to spy on us. That's right, all of them. Birds aren't real.
I think it's the birds one because I remember hearing about the first two.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yay.
QAnon does not believe in the birds one, but again, that is a real conspiracy theory.
Who believes that?
It started as one person joking and like trying to go viral. That he stood on a street corner in like Pasadena or something with a shirt and a sign that said "Birds aren't real," and he just shouted at people saying "Birds aren't real" for a while, and then that spiraled on the internet out of control. And now there is an actual subset of people that believes that all birds are CIA drones. And while that's not a QAnon thing, I bet a lot of QAnon people do believe that.
Yeah, I would feel safe in assuming that some of them believe that.
Yeah, at least if QAnon said that, they would be like, no, yeah, that makes sense. And our final question. Republicans like to say, if only Democrats would stop playing politics and work with President Trump. Unfortunately, their memory seems to not go back beyond 2016. Which of these was not a real thing that Texas Governor Greg Abbott said about Barack Obama? A, that he had to deploy the Texas State Guard to protect the state because a Navy SEAL Green Beret joint training exercise was actually a cover for Obama's attempt to take over Texas and declare martial law. B, regarding the 2014 Ebola epidemic, if this doctor who so recklessly flew into New York from West Africa has Ebola, then Obama should apologize to the American people and resign. I would remind you that we are now nearing 200,000 deaths from COVID-19. Or C, that his schedule as Attorney General of Texas was, I go into the office in the morning, I sue Barack Obama, and then I go home.
Which one did he not say?
Which one did he not say?
I think. Oh gosh, kind of down to B or C. I know A is real.
A is real.
Jade Helm.
Yes.
B sounds like something you'd say, but I'm gonna say B is the fake one.
So B is actually something Donald Trump said.
Okay.
Yes, Donald Trump said that if one person in America had Ebola, then Obama should resign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, he doesn't hold himself by the same standard.
Of course not. No, he hasn't held himself to the same standards at all.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh my God.
So you've won the game, Jennifer.
Sweet.
How scary that two of those answer choices in each of those were real.
Yeah. I mean, it's mind blowing. Like it's mind blowing. I mean, this is where we are now. Lizard people.
Yeah, and even the fake answer choices, 3 of them actually were real, but not in that context.
Right, and so that's just, God, how did we get here, Ian? How did we get here? Yeah. Like, you can't even answer that. Like, what do you say? Like, there's no answer to that. I mean, there is, but it's long.
And it's long, and I don't think I'm enough of an expert to answer. You could probably write a book about it. Someone probably has, honestly.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. There's got to be a Twitter thread out there.
The idea that there are so many people that believe that the Earth is flat. So I was on an airplane once, coming from. We were flying from London to, I can't remember where I was landing in America on my way into Dallas. I think it was New York, maybe, but it was across the Atlantic. And we're flying over Iceland. And I look out the window, and on one side of the plane, pitch dark, nighttime. On the other side, bright, sunny. How does that work if the Earth is flat, people? Please explain that to me.
I don't know. I don't know how to unlearn that the world is round, so I can't explain it to you.
Well, congratulations for winning the game, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Although, did any of us really win that game?
No, nobody won that.
Speaking of the COVID-19 pandemic, Texas was one of the last states to lock down, one of the first ones to reopen, and predictably saw a spike in cases and in deaths this summer. How would the state's response to COVID-19 have differed if Lupe Valdez, who, for those of you who aren't from Texas, was the Democratic candidate for governor in 2018, if she was governor, or if you or someone like you was governor, how would the response have differed?
Well, I think if Lupe had won, or if I was governor, which is weird to think about, we would not have catered to our big donors. Although I don't picture myself taking money from big donors that would behave like that. So we would not have hesitated to put the state on a nationwide stay-at-home order, at least long enough to get the cases under control, to get testing in place, get contact tracing into place, lots and lots of testing, frequent testing, because, for some people it takes more than one test, especially if they're hospitalized, because they have to constantly test them. So I would have fought for my state to have everything that we need. I would have fought for ventilators to make sure our hospitals are taken care of, and PPE. And, being a mom, and anybody would tell you this, being a mom in March, I would think school starts in August. We should figure out what we're going to do. So, we would have had, and of course, people would have been angry about having to wear masks or not being able to go to work, or, everything that happened for the whopping 2 weeks that it was in place. But we would have been in a much better place right now. And that's something that I think would have happened had we had somebody else in office.
What can we do once you're in office and other people like you're in office to make sure that this doesn't happen? Well, it will happen again, like you said.
Well,
we're better prepared for it next time.
we need to put something in place in the next session, a better preparedness plan, because obviously we can't depend on our federal government to keep a plan in place. Something was created by the Obama administration. He basically handed it to him on a silver platter, and Trump threw it out. So we cannot, as a state, depend on them to have it all together. We need to be prepared here at home and have a better plan than, well, let's wait and see what they tell us. And then it ended up getting thrown in the laps of people down the ballot who just didn't know what to do. It's when it's a global pandemic, when it's affecting the entire planet, the higher ups need to be the ones in charge, because patchwork doesn't work. So the next global pandemic that comes our way, we need to be prepared, and the people of Texas need to be prepared for a statewide, for a similar mandate, and depending on the virus. But just be prepared. We may have to shut things down again until we figure out what this virus is, how it's transmitted, and what we can do to be safe. We need to put something like that in place next session, working together with everybody that it affects: business owners, schools, parents, teachers, administrators, everybody. Is it going to be a big project? Yes. Is it something I'm going to scream and yell and push for until we get it? Yes. But we were caught, we were standing around twiddling our thumbs. What do we do? What do we do? Because we had terrible leadership in DC, and I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be open
DC
to that.
and in Austin.
Yeah. So I think we should just go ahead and have something in place that doesn't really give the governor a choice.
You mentioned schools, and that's one of the things that annoys me, because Republicans like to say, oh, Democrats want to keep schools closed, or Democrats want to keep everything closed, they say. It's like, so...
Yeah, because I'm enjoying this so much.
Yeah, right? First of all, I think now that schools are opening and we're seeing thousands of children get COVID-19, kind of proves us right, first of all. But also, no, we would love to open schools. You've made that impossible.
Yeah.
By ignoring this, if you had done something about this before, this would not be an issue right now. I know people who live in China. I used to live there myself. And you'll remember that COVID-19 started in China. Things are basically completely back to normal in China because they dealt with things. People don't even have to wear masks unless they're going to be like in a big crowd anymore. And they can be in big crowds again. They don't even have community spread in China. And also, although China was getting, it looked like it was getting badly hit in the beginning, if you look at how it actually turned out, because they locked down, because everyone wore masks, because they had testing and tracing, they actually did pretty well compared to a lot of countries. If we had the same death rates per capita as China does, less than 1,000 people would have died in America. Less than 1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump likes to talk about how many tests we do. They had that outbreak in Beijing a couple months ago where only like 100 people or something like that got COVID, and they tested everyone in the city. That's a city with 20 million people in it.
Yeah.
That's a city more than twice the size of New York. Schools are restarting in China, and every single school child is getting a test before they go to school. And that's without community spread.
Yeah.
And if we had taken the same precautions, or not even something as draconian as what China did, but look at what Germany did, France, look at even
New Zealand.
Were harder hit. New Zealand, even countries that were harder hit like Italy and Great Britain and Spain, they got their stuff together relatively quickly compared to us. Things would be back to normal by now, or soon after now. And it's like, it's your fault that we can't open, people. All you people complaining that we want to keep things closed,
Yep.
It's your fault. You're the one that caused this.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd just taken this seriously when it started and, provided some leadership and some guidance and say, you know what, it's going to be okay, but for now, this is what we need to do. in order to get this thing under control. But the mindset of like the petulant children of government just refuse, and it just, I mean, still to this day, I don't understand what the benefit of that is. It can't be a thing that,
like we talked about earlier. People
yeah,
not looking past what, not just not looking past what's happening right now, not looking past what are my personal political interests at this very moment, not long term, at
right.
this very moment. What will benefit me the most? I don't care what will happen to everyone else. For me,
Yeah, and that's just
a mean tweet from Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that just proves that that's really poor leadership, because sometimes being a leader means you have to make some hard decisions, and people are not going to like you for it. You know, do I want to see things get shut down and people lose their income? Of course not. I fight every single day. I talk about this every single day. People need to be getting paid more than what they're getting paid now. You know, we need to be raising wages, and people in lower income need help. But none of that is going to matter if our economy is suffering because a large chunk of the population is sick. You know, we can't fight for one if the other is completely knocking out the possibilities of getting there. So
it's like the reason that the economy is bad is because there's a disease going around. And especially with the unemployment benefits in Congress, that people were saying, if they're too generous and it'll incentivize people not to go back to work. People shouldn't be going back to work in a lot of places. In a lot of places, people can't go back to work. We want people to stay home from work, because if they stay home from work, then they're not going to have to deal with this for the next year.
Yeah.
They kept saying in the beginning, 14 days to slow the spread. And then 14 days later, all right, 14 days starting now. 14 days starting now. Every 14 days they would say that, right? It's like, okay, well, you can't just saying the words 14 days to slow the spread is not in itself going to slow the spread. You have to do something in those 14 days.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it didn't help when they talk about the difference between asymptomatic and people that are showing symptoms. They were making it sound like, well, if you're asymptomatic, then you can't spread it. There was so much bad information that was drowning out the truth, which is, you know, you can spread this virus regardless of whether or not you have symptoms. So that was another whole point of keeping people at home, if at all possible, to slow that part of the spread. But we had to have Lowe's, and we had to have Home Depot, and then, I mean, and of course we have to have grocery stores because we have to eat, but we can't limit that to roadside service, and then, you know, we got to open the restaurants back up because people want to sit in a restaurant and eat, you know. Just,
God forbid people eat at home.
Yeah, I mean, just eat at home or get takeout. Let the restaurant stay open, but get takeout. I understand. Yes, again, I know it was hurting financially, but our federal government was supposed to have a plan in place for that, and they screwed that up.
I mean, literally, that's the entire thing the government is for, is to support people at times when private corporations or private interests can't.
Yeah.
And they chose not to. They didn't fail to. They chose not to do that.
Yeah. Republicans push for small government, and, well, the federal government should only be here, you know, in cases of emergency. And they couldn't even do it.
This is an emergency.
Like, they couldn't even do it. So, you know, it just, man, I tell you, if this pandemic did anything good, or at least not as bad, it has shined a light on the hypocrisy of the GOP when it comes to what they think of government, when it comes to what they think of their citizens, like Dan Patrick wanting to sacrifice the elderly for the economy, and it has made it abundantly clear that our healthcare system is way worse than we have already been saying it is, and that we need to fix it. So at least it's done that.
Yeah. So we're fixing to get to the end real quick, but before we go, I want
Okay.
to ask you, give your quick pitch. Why should people support your campaign? And if they want to support your campaign, how can they do that?
Um, so I am. You, you should support my campaign because I am a mom that is fighting for the health, safety, and education of Texans. I'm not here for special interests. I don't care what the big donors have in mind, what their big agenda is. I don't really have big donors. I'm here to fight for the constituents, both of 106 and everyone that's in Texas. Your interests are my interests. My family looks like your family, and if we don't look the same, I will, and you need something, I will fight for you. um, the guy that's in office right now doesn't care. He does what they tell him to do down in Austin. To help me get there, you can go to my website, which is Skidonenko for tx.com, and you can sign up to volunteer or you can donate. We have a huge weekend of action coming up, a weekend of September 18th, 19th, and 20th. And we're going to do a massive lit drop in phone bank. So please sign up for that. I would love to have you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for having us, or thank you for coming on. It was so great to have you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Go to it's skidanenkofortexas.com.
Yes.
Yes, and you can find her on social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that. Skidanenko for Texas, I believe, on all of those. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. So definitely go follow her there. Follow the Lucretia Report too if you haven't. Links in the description. And also, our coupon code for this week for the Lucretia Report store, it's going to give you 10% off. And if you use this coupon code, we're going to donate $2 to the Skidanenko campaign too for use of the coupon code. So
Thank
you. Thank you. Or you're welcome. Excuse me. Definitely go to lucretiareport.com/store. Buy some merch like this shirt, perhaps. And use the coupon code Skidanenko. If you want to know how to spell that, it's in the title. Take a look down there.
Yeah, just copy paste.
Yep. And also go to skidanenkofortexas.com and support her campaign there. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Jennifer.
Well, thank you for having me.
And best of luck. Bye.
Thank you.